Hey, everybody, welcome to the Your Drone Questions Answered podcast. I am Drone Launch Academy founder David Young. I'm filling in today for John Dicko, our normal host. I have here with me today Sinuhe Montoya from Drone Quote. Sinuhe, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
And the question that we're going to answer today is, how are drones being used to help the solar install process? And we're going to dive into a little bit of how drones are also being used to inspect existing solar panels. So, Sinuhe, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, some of your experience in solar and with drones, and give us your kind of 2 minute story here.
Okay, thanks, man. So I'm Sinuhe, as David just mentioned. I have been in the residential solar and roofing industry for the better part of 10 years now, and 4 or 5 years into the industry, I realized that I didn't like getting on roofs, probably because they're tall and I'm not. And I started using a drone to facilitate better data acquisition without me getting on the roof. And it made a world of a difference for me because it allowed me to gather the data that I needed in a quicker manner and in a safer manner. And it had a real profound impact on my sales. And I realized, holy smokes, there's a definitely an opportunity here to be more efficient.
So, just for those not familiar with the solar process, so like with the before drones, what's the typical process for going out on a residential or commercial property and figuring out how to install solar panels on top of it?
So a good salesperson is going to want to understand what's taking place on the roof, the measurements of physical obstructions or shade obstructions or condition of the roof, and how far, an obstruction may be from a certain feature of the roof where you can fit a panel or not. And,
And
somebody
obstructions
gets
are
on
just
the
like
roof.
stuff sticking out of the roof, right? Like vents and things like that.
Correct, like a chimney, a feature of the house, or a
Yep.
vent, and
Okay.
you'll want to climb the roof and walk the roof and lay out your measuring tape, which is a real pain in the butt if it's a long span you're trying to measure. And then after post sales, there's also a site survey that takes place where it's a more in depth measurement. But a good salesperson would have gathered all that information on the front end, and that's where there was a lot of friction that I was finding.
Gotcha. And I know some solar companies, or I've heard of them at least, you'll use like satellite imagery. But what's the advantage of using drones over satellite?
Satellite imagery, unless you're paying for the most updated imagery, is going to be outdated. And even the paid imagery, there's a company called Nearmap. It's rather expensive, and you still don't have the level of detail that you're going to get from a drone, obviously flying 50 feet above the roof. So it's a matter
Hmm.
of definition and dated imagery if it's the former.
Gotcha. So, like, walk us through the process once you started using drones. What's the process of getting the data that you need? Are you just taking a bunch of pictures? Like, how do you actually get those measurements of a roof, and how do you collect the information you need? Is it just normally like you just go up and snap pictures, or is there more to it than that?
So it's a little bit more involved. Yes, you're taking pictures, but it's a process that you're following because if you just simply take pictures, you're not going to gather the data you need. We set out a scale, or we use features in the property as a scale to import the imagery into like a Aurora software, if you will, to design a system. And then we turn all the images into an ortho map, as I'm sure you're aware of what that is. And that allows us to
Well,
zoom
for people,
in
some
very.
people might not be. So, explain real quick, what is an ortho map or an ortho mosaic?
So an orthomosaic map is the sum of, say, 30 pictures that the software stitches together into one. You're able
Yep.
to get a very, in-depth look at that roof or whatever it is you're using that ortho map for. So the drone pilot follows the protocols to gather the imagery for the ortho map, and then we want features in the images as well. So we'll take a side view of a property if there's a tall tree, and then with the ortho map we could see how tall the distance from the tree to the house or where the panels are
Hmm.
landing. And then we're able to, import that data into the software I mentioned earlier, Aurora, and it tells you a very good idea of what the shade obstructions are going to be like, and then also square
Okay.
footage of a roof.
I'm assuming shade, because again, I don't know a ton about solar, but I'm assuming shade obstructions is something's blocking the sun. Solar panel can't pick up the energy from the sun, and they're not going to be as efficient.
Correct. And you want to be able to account for that. You want to be able to define or quantify what effect that shade is going to have on the output of electricity. If you have a
Gotcha.
nice, clear, open roof that has no shade, it'll produce more than, even a well oriented position that has, 30% shade.
Gotcha. So you can take that images and orthomosaic image from the drone that you captured, and you can load that straight into your like design software that you use. It like takes it all and uses it.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful because you're able to you go from the images and if you could imagine, transforming the image of a real image into the software, it's awesome how it just goes from you have this picture to now you have this computerized image of the property with the trees and the chimney and the vents and everything exactly where they should be because you're able to get this kind of detail that you wouldn't otherwise get from satellite imagery.
So kind of creating like a virtual version of the property into this design software. And then I'm assuming this, I don't know much about design software. So I'm assuming is that stuff that will like calculate the angles of the sun and how much energy it's going to be able to get and all that fun stuff? Or is
That's
that something
exactly what it
else?
does. Yep. Yep. No,
Okay,
it's
sweet.
exactly what it does, and it's nice because, that tree that's 50 feet tall nearby the house in the summer months, you may not think that it's gonna cause there to be a lot of shade, but in the winter months
Mm,
when the sun is lower in the, horizon, it'll definitely have a
mm,
different impact or a higher impact on that roof or those panels, and that's where the drone comes in real handy because if it's a two-story difficult to access roof, you're not going to get this side profile image by doing, a walk around on the roof. There's tools that you could use that are actually really accurate, but most people don't have these tools. It's called a sun eye, and got a fisheye lens. You take a picture on the roof, so you have to get on the roof, and it
mm.
gives you an idea of where the sun's going to be. But if you don't have that tool and you're not getting on the roof, then the drone is literally the next best thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. The less time you spend on a roof, safer things get. And I to see how that would definitely be helpful.
Anybody that's working out in the field with these drones, you're able to get a good look at the rest of the neighborhood, and it shows you available opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise see from the ground. So from a sales
Mm.
perspective, it's super valuable for that as well.
And now, what opportunities, like when you say you'll see other opportunities, what would that look like?
So you would see all the roofs that don't have solar. Sometimes you spot a roof and you're like, "Oh, that's a great roof. It doesn't have solar, but the solar is actually on the backside of the house." Right. And with the
Mm,
drone, you're able to see that. But beyond that, if you do like an ortho of the neighborhood, which we do, we could see which
mm,
roofs need, TLC or need to be replaced, which roofs are
mhm.
a great opportunity for solar to be put on, and you reach out to the homeowner with that understanding ahead of time.
You can say, "Oh, hey, I was at the neighbor's house doing this solar project and noticed your roof, what, points in the right direction?" Or I guess what makes a roof
It
good
would
for
be
solar?
Yeah, it'd be very similar to that. You have a great roof that'd make for an efficient system, and an efficient system costs less and makes for a better return on investment.
Gotcha. And this is just an aside here. This is not necessarily with drones, but I had some guys come out here. They were solar guys. Like, can we look at your roof, whatever? I said, yeah, sure. They were nice. So they were looking around and they're like, yeah, we'll follow up with you. We'll come out and we'll like talk to you. They kind of got my utility bills and all that stuff. And um, they were wanted to set up a time to come back and meet with me. And like the first time, like I ended up something had came up. So I felt bad, but I like kind of had to cancel slash reschedule on them once or twice. But I was like genuinely interested in actually meeting with them. But then they just never followed up after that. They just like let it go. And I was like, oh, if they would have followed up with me a couple more times or like, you know, continued to be like, oh, hey, sorry, that time didn't work. Do you want to do this time? Like I would have met with them and I might have bought something, but they just dropped it. I was genuinely like, oh, I wish those guys would have. I mean, I could have made the effort, but I'm just like, I just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, I mean, they should, want or bad enough to follow up with you. But
Sorry,
knowing
that has nothing to do with it. But just saying, if you're in the business of like selling stuff to people that is actually helpful, don't be afraid to follow up with them some more. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, we have a high success rate in offering the service of the survey to the homeowners before we quote anything, and people pay for that. We
mm,
charge it for the survey because there's no signed agreement, so we have to have some kind of commitment, and money obviously works, and it is a great tool to help close the business. It works really well.
yeah,
The
yeah,
drones, that is.
awesome. All right, so let's all right lock back in on solar. So let's do in. I know this isn't necessarily your kind of specialty, but you know definitely more about it than I do, or maybe the average person. When you are going to inspect a solar panel, let's say it's a solar farm, or you want to see how the panels on your roof are doing. Like, let's say they've been up there for a while. What equipment do you need, and what do they look for when you're doing like solar panel inspections?
So for solar panel inspections, the thing that you're going to want to look for is with thermal equipment is dark spots in the panels. That'll tell you if a cell is bad or if the whole panel is bad. The thing now, this is my speculation because we don't do large scale inspections of farms. With a
Hmm.
farm, it would be very very efficient because it's going to be a lot quicker than somebody on the ground, obviously. So
Hmm.
and it'll stand out. The anomalies will stand out a lot better.
There's just temperature differences basically on the panels, and that's when it's going to show you what's good or bad.
Correct, correct. Now the thing is, on residential, the cost of the equipment, the thermal equipment, versus the cost of paying somebody to do the survey, they're not congruent with one another. So
Mm.
a residential owner of a system would probably not want to pay for that survey post installation because you have monitoring on your mobile device or on your computer
Oh,
that,
interesting.
yeah, that tells you what's going on with the system, right? So
Gotcha.
same with a commercial system, you would have monitoring, but there's just so many more panels, and it's worth, I believe, to get the thermal inspections. On the residential side, it would not necessarily return a viable ROI for somebody.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. Cool. Anything else before we go that you want to close out with that would be helpful for people who are just curious about solar and how that intersects with drones?
If you're curious about, how we would work with you in your area, you can go check us out at dronequote.com. If you're somebody like David who potentially could be a solar customer, could also go to dronequote.com. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, to your audience.
Cool. Thanks for coming on here and giving us some info on solar and drones.
You got it. It's been my pleasure.